Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Brunton Bugle, the best place to get your Carlisle United fix in the podcast world. I'm Lee Rooney.
And I'm Dan McLennan.
It's the end of days as United have finally won a league fixture. On this episode, we review the narrow win over Walsall that ended a run of 12 league games without a victory, and look ahead to this weekend's FA Cup tie against Shrewsbury Town as the two sides fight for a place in the third round.
There's a kneel with a pass so true to Boulder Stone and Clark's in view. There's a cross and a run, the old one too.
Third time lucky there, Dan, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a good job we edit these things, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is, isn't it? They absolutely messed that up big time, the original attempt at that, but there you go. Good to have you back on, Dan. It's been a few weeks, actually, hasn't it? You've been away.
Couple of weeks.
Yeah. You've enjoyed yourself in the sun for a couple of weeks, away from Carlisle United.
It was bit different, coming from 24 degrees to about 2 degrees on Saturday.
Indeed,
But it was worth it.
100% worth it, wasn't it? Fantastic result the weekend, it's fair to say. Let's get straight into the news section, Dan. One little bit of news here today that's just emerged. Great bit of news, actually, isn't it? It's about young Scott Simons. Yes, the second-year YTS goalkeeper. He's not his first-year pro, could you say?
They're both, aren't they? They're like the pros, but they're not because they can't officially be type thing. And
yeah, but they have got professional contracts, basically. Yes. And so young Scott Simons has been invited to the St George's Park training ground, the England training ground that is, by the FA to take part in the England men's goalkeepers development camp next week. So Simons will join up with the rest of the attendees from the 5th to the 8th of December as a reward for his impressive work with the Blues, which has seen him feature on the bench for the last 7 fixtures in a row, I think it is now, isn't it? Yeah. That means Simons will actually miss the trip to Mansfield Town next week, and Gabe Breeze will step up in his absence. It's interesting reading about this today, wasn't it, Dan, as well, that I was reading Dan Hanford's comments and he mentioned the fact that he's actually had a little bit of a growth spurt, which is good news because that's the one thing that stood out for me with Simons. He didn't look quite as big as Breeze, did he, in terms of his size?
Breeze is like a lamppost, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's
a big
tall lad. But it sounds like Simons has caught him up a little bit over the autumn.
Yeah, because originally what I'd heard in the summers was they rated them both really highly, but Breeze was probably ahead of Simons. So it sounds like Simons maybe is. We could have a situation in a couple of years where these are our first and second choice keepers. Which is mad, really, isn't it? That'll be a great position to be in.
If the family silverware hasn't been flogged off long before then.
Well, always a risk of that, isn't there? As long as
England call up probably means being touted out already.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see, won't we, on that one? Just something else with the news before we get on to reviewing the Walsall game. We've had a couple of people on Twitter ask us, why don't you cover the midweek Peter Trophy games? Why do you always ignore them? Well, we'll give a brief mention now, the fact that United are through to the next round. They drew 1-1 with Lincoln, but won on penalties. That's as much as we'll get about talking about the game, really, because we just have a principled stand about this, don't we, Dan?
Six seasons and counting.
6 seasons counting.
Fist.
Which, that's sad though, isn't it? Because when you look back, we used to love going to games in this competition. We get some really weird games.
Prior to 2016, the trophy was brilliant. We were one of the most successful sides in it, 6 finals. One of a very small number who've played at Old Wembley, Cardiff and New Wembley. Yeah. I think we did 2 at each, didn't we?
Yeah.
We've had two victories, 4 defeats, and we've been to other semi-finals where we got beaten. And, it was the gates were never going to be as big as league, but once we got into like semis and northern finals, they were really good nights, some great matches, and it's we just think it's been devalued when the under 23s as they were then came in.
Yeah, if you go back to the early days, it was always a great competition where you sometimes got to see these young players coming through that didn't, this is the first taste you got of them playing first team games, wasn't it? And like you mentioned, we got to a few finals, and it is very much a principle stand we're taking. We don't talk about it because we don't recognise it. We don't go to the games.
When you see Norwich under 21s playing 35-year-old John Ruddy in goal type thing,
it's ridiculous. Isn't it? It's ridiculous, isn't it? And until the B teams are gone, we'll continue that stance basically because we feel that it's basically the thin wedge, basically, isn't it? And all that'll happen is if we continue to accept this, before you know it, B teams are in the league.
Sorry, I must. Wolves, not Norwich.
Wolves, yes, you're right. He was at
Norwich.
But
I did think he played for Norwich in one of the first years. But he's been back at Wolves a bit, hasn't he? But he's not the only one. There's been 28-year-old French blokes playing, and
Charlie Adams played it, didn't he? For Stoke.
Man City were complaining about being short for the League Cup game, and they played in the trophy on the same night. So the lads that would normally play in the trophy were actually in the League Cup, some of them, meaning they were playing 16 and 17-year-olds. It just devalues it.
Yeah, it does.
I could rant all evening, but we have other things to talk about.
We have other things to talk about, yes. But that's just a little explanation for anyone who's wondering why we don't talk about it. And as much as it pains to say it, if we got to Wembley, we wouldn't go. Because we don't believe it, and that would be.
I'm actually out the country when the final's on anyway, so that's a bit of a blessing. It's a
blessing in disguise, isn't it? In that sense. Right, let's get on to the match review then, and let's talk about league action. Let's talk about where all the good things happen. United won, Walsall 0. Who would have thought? The barren run is over. Didn't they half? Yes, so United finally get a league win. After 12 games without picking up all 3 points, and it also ends a run of 5 consecutive home fixtures without scoring. In the league, that is, of course. We scored in the FA Cup, of course, against Horsham. Dan, it certainly wasn't the prettiest performance from the Blues, I think it's fair to say, but they dug in to get Keith Millen's first 3 points as Blues boss and push themselves out of the bottom 2, and that's all that matters at the moment, isn't it? Getting 3 points, getting ourselves away from danger, and getting ourselves through to January. That's the aim over the next few games, surely.
Yeah, I don't think we struggled much against Walsall. Walsall must be disappointed with their performance because
I thought they were really poor,
they were really poor. Yeah. They really were, and they didn't really threaten us that much.
No.
And don't get us wrong, we weren't exactly scintillating in attack, but I thought we shaded it, and I think 1-0 was probably a fair result. I mean, it is good getting a late goal like that because there was a good cheer when it went in.
Yeah, it gives everyone a real lift.
It would have been nice to have it a bit earlier and get a second, but
it would have been.
3 points is 3 points, isn't it?
I mean, even when the goal went in, you never really felt like we were going to concede, did you? And that's a nice feeling to have, actually. Yeah. And the thing is, actually, when you look back, we talk about how bad we've been in defence this season. I think we kept about 6 or 7 clean sheets. We haven't done that bad because we've had quite a few 0-0s in there, haven't we, in the league?
Yeah.
We've had about 4 or 5 of them. So, it's frustrating at times, isn't it, that we can't do it a bit more often. But, like I said, the important thing was getting the 3 points. So come 2 o'clock, Dan, when the teams were announced, one name on there, a little bit of a surprise, everyone, a bit of one that caught everyone's eye, making his debut one day after his 18th birthday, Sam Fishburn. I know you've been calling out for him to be starting games for a while now, for a few weeks, but were you not even a little bit surprised that he started the game?
Possibly. I think most people would have expected not both the young'uns to start because it's a hell of a...
Yeah.
But then again, we've been as guilty as anyone of shouting for it, and...
Yeah.
Let's be honest, they didn't do too bad, eh?
No, they didn't do too bad.
They were up against a very big defence that we noticed where I sit. Walsall's defenders are quite big lads.
I mean, Manny Monty's a man mountain. Enough, but
it'll be a good workout.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like you said, the big thing was the fact that you look and you think, 2 18-year-olds starting in there. But I mean, Abraham's only about 4 or 5 years older than him. He's not like he's late 20s, is he? And, bags and bags of experience. He's got a bit, but, two young lads in there, and I felt they battled really well. I mean, the other changes in there, there was 4 changes in total, wasn't there? So you had Clough, Abrahams, Dickinson and Devine were all out of the starting lineup. Dickinson was out of the squad altogether with a knock, and in came Joe Riley back from his foot injury, Sam Fishburn, Morgan Feeney and Jack Armour. Meant a little bit of a shuffle in the team, didn't it? So Connor Whelan stepped up into midfield and Riley was sort of playing on the wing, wasn't he? He started off on the right and then moved over to the left, I think, a little bit later on. In fact, no, so he started on the left and moved to the right, didn't he? I think that's what happened. And like I said, that probably wasn't the best performance we've seen under Miller. I think we've seen better performances under him. But like you said, that they look solid. They worked hard, didn't they? And they showed a willingness to not really give Walsall much time on the ball.
Yeah. You got to get athleticism off them, aren't you? They're keen to impress. And no, they certainly did. Because there was a whisper through the week that Young might go back to Villa. I don't know if anyone else has heard this. I've only heard it off one person. I can't say if it's true or not. I'm not. It might be, it might not be.
I wonder if that's people putting two and two together with Gerrard coming in thinking he wants to see all the players come back and that. I can see why Newcastle took Sorensen back when he was on loan with us, because he wasn't even getting games.
Yeah,
but Young's actually getting games.
Young's playing quite a few games now when you look at his stats.
And we'll talk about his performance later on, because I've got a few comments on that. Not necessarily negative, but just a few thoughts on that later. Early on in the game, it was a bit of a worrying start, wasn't it? I mean, Walsall cut us open in the first minute, and Wilkinson sort of danced through and wasn't really dealt with, and the ball came to Otis Carnan. I mean, I was right behind that shot, and he was inches wide of the post, the one he curled from the edge of the box. And at that point, you think, oh, here we go again. It's another one of those afternoons, isn't it? But they steadied themselves. They looked have a little bit of a threat on the attack in the first half. I mean, Gibson couldn't have gone much closer, could he, with that shot he had? No,
it was unlucky that, and I thought Gibson played all right again. He's one of those. Even when he has a bad game, he still tries. He doesn't. He
still creates things, doesn't he?
He'll still have a go, and even when it's not going for him, and there's one or two others could maybe take a leaf out of his book, to be quite honest, because.
There's a few times where he tries a bit too much, and I think sometimes that's why he's got to learn his game, isn't he? Where he's got to lay the ball off and rely on his teammates a bit more as well. But like you said, he keeps trying and he keeps creating stuff as well. You always know you can potentially get something from him. That's the key thing. And the effort he had, he sort of gets into the box and he steadied himself. There's 3 defenders there, and he just sort of, it's almost like a golf shot, wasn't it? He sort of just chips it out and it curls around the keeper, and it just, 1 inch further the other way and it's in the back of the net, and you think, what a brilliant goal, what a brilliant little finish that was. Didn't quite work out. And then Joe Riley, I missed this one because I nipped to the toilet. I heard the cheer as it went narrowly over the bar. He tried his luck from just inside the centre circle, didn't he?
Yeah, wasn't far off either, was it?
Yeah, certainly wasn't. I've seen it back now on the iPhone, so I do know how close it was. But the keeper was scrambling back and a little bit worried there, wasn't he? But that was about it for the first half. But unfortunately, the injury to Joe Riley, this is what I think a few people miss. We saw it directly happen because it was right in front of where I stand in the paddock. And it was a bit of a naughty one from Otis Khan, really, because Riley's sort of running away. The ball's nowhere near him. And he just blocks him off and almost smashes him to the ground is probably the wrong phrase, but he basically hauls him over and to the ground, and he lands really awkwardly on his shoulder. And you could tell at that point he was in absolute agony, couldn't you, really?
Yeah.
Fair play to him. He tried to play on, but he was basically holding his arm and as if to say, I no, can't carry on here, and had to come off the tail of charters in the end, didn't he? And we just had to regroup and get ourselves through to half time. And second half started quite brightly for Walsall. George Miller had a chance where he fired it just wide of the goal. Charters then had a chance for us where just inside the area where he showed good footwork, but he just scooped his shot over the bar. He just got underneath it a little bit. And I think they had a chance up the other end as well, I think, for Ozadabi, who got away and had a shot from 25 yards at sail just over the bar. And then that was the goal, Dan. It was the only real of a big chance of the half, wasn't it? And I hadn't actually noticed this time. I completely forgotten this after the game, but because Abrahams had come on, hadn't he, at this point? I can't remember if he came on for Young or Fishburne. I don't know. Top of head, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Young, actually, because I think Young tired quite quickly in the game. He did really well, actually. He wins a free kick because their defender's got the ball. He's got a bit of time on it. And he quickly nipped in, took the ball off his toes, and the player basically clipped him because he was trying to play a pass.
Yeah.
Wins a free kick. Now, I don't think Callum Guy means this free kick, do you? I've watched it a couple of times. He's overhit it a bit. And tell you what, Ron McDonald does brilliantly.
It's when you watch it on the GoPro footage from behind the goal, it's measured, it's inch perfect.
Yeah,
he's just sort of cushions it over. It's it's not what you expect a League Two in and out of form centre back to be doing in the opposition box.
Well, yeah, and the thing is as well, like you said, it's measured. That's the key thing, because the easiest thing for a centre back to do there is just absolutely welly the thing, and it goes over everyone, or it doesn't really go anywhere accurately. He put it into exactly the right place, and credit Abrahams. He was sharp, he was alert, and My first thoughts when I saw it live was like, he tried his hardest to miss that because I thought he put it straight at the keeper, but he actually hit it really well, to be fair, and he took it well, and you could see just how much it meant to him because he did get a little bit of stick off a couple of people for a couple of moments after he came on, but I actually thought he worked fairly hard, and the problem is you've got people stood near me in the paddock was screaming at him for not pressing every single defender, and the problem is you look at that and you think, you can't do that. You have to step off a bit sometimes, don't you? And block off the potential pass that they're going to make. Because if you press to them and someone else doesn't pick up the press behind you, well, they'll just play it around you. And there's no point then. You need some time just to sit back a bit. And I think he was doing that. And I think that was quite clever play from him.
All right, Jurgen.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So after that, saw the game out. There wasn't really any threat, was there, really? I don't think Walsall even had a shot. I think it was almost like they thought, well, it's one of those days, we're not going to get anything here, really. So, and we saw the game out, and like I said, I was just very disappointed with Walsall. For a team that was in decent form, I expected a bit more from them. I expected a bit more of a threat, but it never really came. So, big 3 points, and we move on, isn't it? Let's talk about some of the individual performances, Dan. Obviously, I mentioned that Abraham's. Credit where it's due, he worked hard. There's still a little bit of his game that are frustrating, aren't they? There's times where he gets the ball and he makes it's basic passes, really sloppy little things that you think, you've trained at a Premier League club before, you should be better at that. You should be able to do that a lot better. But it's just some, I don't know. I don't want to say it's laziness. It just feels sometimes like there's not a little bit of belief there in the way he plays sometimes. Yeah,
Abrams. I mean, let's be honest. He's not a crowd favourite at present.
No.
But I think people were happy he got a goal. And everyone loved his celebration when he went running straight over to Physio Ross, shined his bald head for him. Yeah. I'm sure there's a tale behind that will come out at some point.
Apparently, he said apparently it's for good luck. He's been doing it during the week, apparently. So, he said he would if he scored.
Right. I mean, let's be honest, we want our players to succeed. We want nothing more than Abrams to score every other week. And if this is maybe the start of his road to redemption after a poor autumn, I think it's fair to say.
I think he's worked harder in the last few games as well. I think that's
yeah. But I think that'll be Millen sort of encouraging him, and was it he said he won a meal for two at Fantails, was it? But he's got to take Keith Millen, so I assume Keith Millen's staying at a well-known hotel in the vicinity.
Yes, I'm going to guess that possibly.
Which a certain director of football was frequenting for a while. When he didn't work for us, but he did really, but we didn't tell anyone.
Well, there you go. But I think what fans want to see is a hard-working performance from the players, don't they? And we're getting that from them now, and hopefully long that may continue. Talking to someone who wasn't particularly a fan's favourite recently, Rod McDonald, what a transformation over the last few games. I mean, he's just, from that Northampton game where there's a lot of people saying, get him out of the club, we don't want to see him play anymore. And we didn't quite say that, but we were sort of teetering on the losing patience. He's been excellent last few games. And I mean, he was comfortably man of the match in this match, I thought. The way he played, he was, again, he just showed composure, didn't he, on the ball? A little bit of, taking his time over things, not rushing it. A complete contrast to that game against Northampton where he just didn't look interested at times. And I think, actually, someone that you rate highly, Dan, Morgan Feeney alongside him made a difference as well. I think he done a lot of the dirty work, whereas McDonald did a lot of the sweeping up and just being calm on the ball, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, as I've said previously, I'm a fan of Feeney. I think if he'd hadn't had the injuries he's had, he'd be nowhere near us, and he's probably one of them who'd actually look better higher up the leagues, But I honestly think Feeney will end the season as our number one centre back. He's I'm just looking here. He's played 14 games in total, only 9 in the league. But it's quite interesting. We've got quite a decent record when he's played.
Yeah,
he started in the trophy we don't talk about against Hartlepool when we won, and against Everton when we don't talk about, but and at Morecambe we don't talk about that. But no, he's and Lincoln that we don't talk about.
Oh,
but he's obviously, the results when he plays aren't actually too bad. So
I'd like to see him have a run in the team. I think I'd like to have a nice run because he's in and out.
I think him and McDonald probably deserve a chance to create a partnership because I would say with Riley being out for the foreseeable, I mean, you're looking at similar to TownA last season, maybe.
Yeah.
In terms of length. I think Whelan might end up in midfield a bit. Yeah.
I know, because Divine sort of done okay in the trophy game, but he's not really done it in the league games. He's looked a bit off the pace, whereas Whelan's up to pace because he's played pretty much every game, hasn't he, this season? Only missed a couple.
So it'd be quite nice to see Feeney and McDonald get that chance to create a partnership, and having Whelan in front of them, it's quite clever because if McDonald can take it forward a little bit if he wants to, and if he does, Whelan could just slot in for him. It's I think they're deserving of a few games, and like we were just saying, McDonald since Northampton, when we wanted rid of him, fair play to the lad. He's whether it's just responding to Keith Millen or Millen was a defender himself. He's been round the block training, coaching. He's maybe just sort of said to him, right, you're doing this, do that. Yeah, sorry, I'm sounding a bit pep to your Jurgen.
Yeah, it might just be a case of that Miller just said to him, look, you're clearly a good player. You've won promotion from this division a couple of times. You can't be a bad footballer. Let's start to actually see it. Take some responsibility. And he looked like a player who's taking responsibility at the weekend because he was using the ball well and he was being a lot more composed on the ball and stuff like that. So full credit to him. He's been excellent. You mentioned Whelan there, like you said, new role in midfield. Yeah. I thought he did all right, It's probably going to take him a little bit of getting used to, but
the one thing it does allow, guys played quite deep this season, we think, and Whelan's obviously more defensive, so it allows Guy to get forward a little bit more.
Yeah,
which will hopefully, if them two do play a little bit in the middle, it will allow him to, you look at Callum Guy last season, all that was missing for him was goals.
Yeah,
and he's the sort of midfielder who should be running onto the knockdowns to hammer them in the back of the net, like as Simon Davey used to with Steve Haywood,
Yeah.
And, maybe, sort of half by design, half by accident, we might get him back to the player we all know he can be.
Yeah, that's the challenge, and get him back to the level he was last season. And it might be a little bit of a long road, but we'll get there in the end, hopefully. Let's talk about some of the young players then, Dan. Sam Fishburn, we've mentioned him earlier, obviously. Lively debut. I mean, he certainly made life difficult for Monty in defence for Walsall. I mean, he rolled him a couple of times, and he's a big lad. He's a big, strong lad, Manny Monty. So, full credit to Sam for that. We just want to see him get on the end of a few things now. And it probably wouldn't help because we didn't create that much. And I heard a few people saying, he fluffed his big chance, when he had that volley. But I mean,
it was a half chance.
It didn't sit up for him at all. It was on his wrong foot. Didn't sit up. Don't judge him on something. I mean, there's some people saying, he wasn't good enough. I mean, give his heads a shake, really. He's an 18-year-old
the one thing about both Fishburn and Young is the play with the fearless. They don't give a shit. They're just there to.
Yeah.
If the centre back wants to go at them, they'll love it because people have already forgotten that Fishburn was playing at Lancaster. I think I mentioned this last time. He'll have been up against lads who've played for your Fleetwoods, your Accringtons, your Morecambs. There'll be no mugs, so he'll be used to a bit of rough and tumble. And he's quite a big lad. He probably relishes it,
Yeah, he seems to enjoy it. I mean, on Brad Young, I mean, you can see there's a player in there. And he works hard. And he runs all day. What I think he needs to realise is that he doesn't need to do everything. He tries to. There's a couple of times he gets the ball and he beats one player, and then instead of looking up and thinking, right, who can I lay this off to and make another run, he tries to beat two or three, and he gets the ball robbed off him. And I think that's not getting used to playing first team football compared with under 23.
I was just going to say, I think that's a trait that's come from sort of under 18 and even under 23 slightly.
Yeah.
Because how often do you read a report in the youth team? A player skipped past one and then thought, I'll beat another, then lashed one in from 20 yards. Yeah. It's not school football anymore where you can do that. It's a lot more rigid and, but then that'll come,
Yeah, he'll learn. And I think once he gets his league goal as well, that'll really help because obviously he's only got his goals in the cup so far. But I think I'd be half tempted to stick with the two of them this weekend against Shrewsbury because it'll be a bit of an unknown for Shrewsbury rather than having someone like an Abrams who they might have a bit more gen on bit basically. And Abrams could come on later on when they're tired a little bit as well, which could help things. Another one I want to mention quickly before we move on, Dan. Taylor Charters came on and did a solid job, didn't he? Playing out of position on the right wing, not really something he's used to, but he was solid. And what impressed me was he had about 3 shots, didn't he, from the edge of the area, and I think he blazed all 3 of them over the bar. But he wasn't afraid of doing it each time, was he? It wasn't like the first time he thought,
that's probably 3 more shots than our midfielders had most games.
Exactly. He showed himself not to be fearless in that sense, and I think credit to him for that. And obviously we don't talk about the game in midweek, but what a penalty he took in that game as well, to be fair. So, he's a young lad who's still learning his trade a bit. He's going to take a little bit of a while. It reminds me very much of, I mean, these days, quite often young players get contracts with us as a professional, and they don't get a chance to actually settle into the team. They've basically got to be ready from the very start, haven't they? And if they don't do it in the first season, they're bombed out. He sort of reminds me of going back to like the mid-90s when sometimes players would get 2 or 3 years to actually settle, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
a chance to develop, and it looks like we're doing that with him, which is good, and I think we'll get a good player. A player, maybe he won't play at a much higher level, but I think he's a player who could really do something for us. And I think once he gets a goal as well, I think that'll make a bit of a difference to him as well, because I think he's a player who scored a few when he was in the youth team, but hasn't managed it at first team level yet. Just before we move on to the preview section, Dan, McDonald and Millen were in the EFL League 2 Team of the Week, weren't they? For their heroics weekend.
Probably deserved.
I think with Millen, they just looked and thought, finally got that win after 12 games. It seems the right thing to do, doesn't it? Whereas when McDonald was comfortably man of the match, and that made sense, really. So there you go. Key thing now is just follow it up with a win in the league against Mansfield. If you lose against Mansfield, it just feels like you've wasted a big opportunity to kick on, don't you?
To be fair, looking a little bit ahead, we've got Mansfield away, and is it Stevenage on the Saturday?
Yes, yeah. 2 big games.
You would, to be honest, you take 2 draws from them games being away. If we can get 4 points, superb. If we can get 6, brilliant. Here we go. Yeah.
At the very least, you maybe want a win from one of them, even if you lose one of them. If you lose Mansfield but then win at Stevenage, you'd probably go, okay, that's still progress. You've got 6 points from a possible 9 in the league. That's what you'd look at it potentially. But ideally, you want to get a nice unbeaten run going over the Christmas period, don't you? So
yeah, I think that's the key. Like I say, two draws on the road wouldn't be the worst results, because it'd give them a bit of belief and be like, we haven't been beat. 2 away games in a week, we haven't been beat.
Yeah, exactly that. Well, that's the review section done then, Dan. Let's take a little break now, and we'll be back shortly to discuss the Shrewsbury Town Cup game. And we're back for the second half of the show. Just before we go any further, we normally do this at the end of the show, but I'll just drop it in now, just after the half-time break. Just remind everyone, you can subscribe to the podcast. Just basically go onto any podcast app you use, so Google, Apple, Spotify, what is, I can't remember the one. Acast, that's the one we actually use. I should have mentioned them first, really, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
That's what we use. Just click subscribe, and every time we release a new episode, it'll appear automatically in your feed. And also
I was just going to say, just speaking of those, you might have seen, if you follow our Twitter, Spotted Wrapped for the year is available from the 1st of December, where it basically tells you, all the music you've listened to. I can exclusively reveal that Lee's top 3 were Little Mix, Dua Lipa and Kylie Minogue, but that's for him to worry about. The number of people who've tweeted us saying that our podcast is most listened to this year, it's almost quite touching, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very nice. Well, can I just correct you there? My Spotify Wrapped is as basic and obviously to me as you ever get. Basically, Britpop, alternative rock, indie, The Cribs, Ash, Oasis,
I was just about to say it'll probably be Ash, British Sea Power, The Beatles, Oasis,
and The Cribs. Yeah, basically that's more or less it, basically. But there you go. Yeah, but yeah,
I'm an Apple Music man, so apparently we can do it. There is a way, but I'm not technical enough.
Well, the Spotify
it would just be the Streets and the Prodigy on repeat.
Yeah.
So.
But the Spotify Wrapped podcasters app, there's one that can tell you what, and I think it's 78 different people have us as their top podcast that they listen to, apparently, which is fantastic. Wow. Really nice to know that. I'm guessing a lot of those people, that's the only podcast they listen to.
It could well be.
Hey,
it could well be.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters. But yeah, so you subscribe to the podcast you're using any good podcast app, and obviously you can follow us on social media, as Dan mentioned there. We're on Twitter at Brunton Bugle. On Facebook, just search for Brunton Bugle and click like. And also the Be Just Stand Fear Not Facebook group. We're always on there personally. And we also obviously moderate the Cumbrians.net message board, and we're posted on there all the time as well. So there you go. As we've always mentioned this season, the second half of the show is being sponsored by the Carlisle United Supporters Club London branch. London branch is open to all Carlisle United fans. They've got members from Cornwall to Dundee and Houston, Singapore, and of course every part of London and the South East. They've even got a few in Cumbria as well.
I want to challenge them to prove they are a member in every borough of London.
Ooh,
there's a challenge for you lads.
Okay, lads, if you're listening,
get a coloured map up and mark up every borough of London.
yes. Let's have the proof. They regularly meet up on away trips, as well as arranging many social events and supporters games and doing fundraising for the club. They'll be providing us with information for the away games as part of the preview section this season too. You can find out more about London Branch at their website, carlisle.londonbranch.org. I think I might have a pub for Mansfield as well to share. Let me just double check with you here. Yes, the pre-match pub for Mansfield is the Bold Forester, and that's on Botany Avenue in Mansfield. The postcode NG185NG. So if you want to meet up with any other Blues fans, they're going to be there before the game. I don't think there'll be a huge following for this one, for some reason, Dan, because obviously midweek, just before Christmas, it's one of those games, isn't it? It's
just that little bit too far as well, isn't it? For a lot of it's not one you can finish work at 5 and get to, really.
I mean, I can just about do it finishing at 5, and I live in Liverpool, so that tells you all you need to know. So there you go. Well, let's get on to the Shrewsbury game now then, Dan. This week we spoke to Ollie from the Salopcast podcast ahead of the weekend's game at Brunton Park. Some of the topics we covered included what's it like for the club since that playoff final defeat a few years ago, the fans' view on how manager Steve Cotterill has done, how Ryan Bowman and Sam Cosgrove are getting on at the club, and also whether they miss Gay Meadow since moving to the new ground. It's about 15 years ago now, isn't it? It's been longer than you think. There you go. Okay, so there's the chat I had with Ollie earlier this week. Ollie, thanks for giving up your time to speak to us about Shrewsbury Town. Because it's strange, because Shrewsbury are kind of a club that we've always played quite a lot down the years, but we obviously haven't played you for a while because you've been at a higher level. And on that point, 4 seasons ago, you guys came within 90 minutes of making it to the Championship for the first time in 30 years. But since then, it's been a bit of a slog for you, hasn't it? 3 consecutive bottom half finishes. What went wrong after that big game at Wembley?
Oh, interesting one. Interesting question. Simple question, complicated answer, I think. That one season, just everything clicked.
Yeah.
We had some Premier League players on loan in Ben Godfrey. We had players that just kind of played their careers, their season of their career. So a Go and Rodman and a few others. We had Sadler in defence, who had his perfect season. A couple of other players that we had basically a really solid League One team, plus Dean Henderson, Ben Godfrey, and a few others. We also had Carlton Morris, who's doing really well in the Championship. So we just had some real kind of diamonds in that team. And then after that, we kind of lost Paul Hurst. We also had a situation where, as you guys know, you have a big turnover of players. So we had quite a turnover of players. And then also we had a manager who was really poor. So we kind of went for the Paul Hurst model, sign a young up-and-coming manager. We got Askey from Macclesfield, which on paper looked good, but didn't really have the personality and kind of the strength and the skill set to tie us over.
He's the kind of person, isn't he, Askey? I think he maybe only works at one club, isn't he? I think that's where you look at it.
And I hate that kind. Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't really like that kind of saying, because I don't know, it feels quite limited to say it, that someone can only do well at one club. But
he's proven the point,
true.
Isn't he?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, he's now in non-league, isn't he? It's York. Yeah. And then you've got Eddie Howe. How's he going to go? He didn't do very well at Burnley. Went back to Bournemouth, did well. Be interested to see how he gets on. Yeah. So yeah, for us, it's been dire. Yeah, it's been really dire the last few years, because when you only win a third of your games, and a third of your games you don't score, and the last 2 seasons we scored less than a goal a game. Wow. And I've forgotten some of the horrific stats, but there was I remember some Shrewsbury Town fans comment to us on Twitter, they'd been to 10 games and they hadn't only seen us score like once or something.
Well, funny enough, we just scored our first goal at home in the league in 5 or 6 league games, I think it was. So we're having a bit of that this season. We're not great in front of goal, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, we're rubbish in goal. We don't have a striker. We don't score goals. So this is the last 3 years. It's just been the same. And yeah, we've had 3 managers: so Askey, Sam Ricketts, and now Cottrell.
Yeah. How's your season so far gone then this season? Obviously, we don't follow, like I said, League One quite as closely as we used to, but how are you getting on?
Not very well. So we started the season really badly. So we were actually really excited about the season. Coming into the season, we thought we were going to kind of break this mould and finish mid-table, which would have been for us happy. We're happy to do that, especially considering how difficult League One is this year. There are so many failed Premier League clubs in League One. It's like and if Derby come down as well and Reading, it's a bit of a bin for failed football clubs. Half the league are basically failed football clubs in terms of Wigan, Bolton, Pompey, Sunderland, Ipswich. All have got their history of why they're in League One, which makes it really difficult then, because you get clubs paying 10k a week on a striker, 5k a week on a goalkeeper, and it makes it really difficult to challenge. So we actually went into summer quite excited, because we thought we've got Steve Cottrell, we've got an experienced manager. He did amazing when he came in. His first month, he won Manager of the Month, and we basically won 3 away games against the top 5 or something like that. And we thought, we've got a head of recruitment again, something we'd lost, something that Sam Ricketts had got rid of. So we're really, really excited. We started to sign a few players. Also, we'd signed some really good players in January. So we signed a player called Better, who came from Man City's youth team. He's amazing. He was absolutely amazing last year. He struggled this year. And basically, recruitment has just been poor. So we have 2 first-team central midfielders.
Wow.
We have 3 recognised central defenders and no real right back. We've got Elliot Benny, who played in the Championship and in midfield or on the right wing for Blackburn Rovers, and he's kind of playing right wing back. But I wouldn't say it's his, it's not his career position he's played his whole career.
Yeah.
So we've got 7 strikers who are, and 2 central midfielders. So at the moment, on Tuesday night against Sunderland, we had a striker who it's been very poor for us, playing right wing back. We had a striker playing in central midfield, 2 strikers up front, and then in defence we had 2 left backs in a back 3.
Blimey.
But we got a draw against Sunderland and we beat Charlton on Saturday. And it's a real interesting one, because on one side I'm really frustrated with recruitment. The manager didn't spend the budget, and he's actually replicated what he did at Bristol City in the Championship. He didn't sign enough players and got sacked. But at the same time, what it's like when you have a manager that can't do tactical decisions and sets the team up badly. Every game we go with a really clear game plan, and every game we go into and you can make changes in the game. So, for example, against Stratford Town in the FA Cup, in previous years, I'm sure you've had a few scares. Like I remember losing to Blythe Spartans in the FA Cup and some horrific days. We were really convinced we were going to win. Yeah. Because we have confidence in that side. So yeah, I've spoken a lot there, but we're quite a mixing pot at the moment, a bit of a melting pot of issues and problems.
You mentioned Cotterill there. I mean, he's someone who it's fair to say he's known for his agricultural football. I think that's the polite way of putting it. How did the fans view him? Because he seemed to come in and do a brilliant job when he first arrived, and then he's obviously had his little spell where he was away when he caught COVID. But what's the thought on him this season? How are the fans viewing him?
It's interesting you say agricultural football. I'm not sure where that's come from, because when he was at Bristol City, when you first sign a manager, you know what it's like on Twitter. Twitter can be great. And we had 2 sides of a coin. Like one side, Bristol City fans were like raving about him. This is like, this godlike figure, what an amazing manager he was. They scored over 100 goals.
Yeah.
And played some great football and got promoted. And then Birmingham City fans saying that he was absolutely terrible and good luck and God knows why you signed him. So we tried at the start of the season trying to play some better football, but because, as I've said, the issues we have with recruitment, we play direct football. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's agricultural as such. We don't lump it long to a target man, but we do play the channels. But we will play football when we can as well. So Cotterill obviously had COVID and was seriously ill over last January period.
Yeah.
But he seems to be well now. He's lost a lot of weight and he looks healthy, which is obviously the main thing when it comes to someone's health. It's hard. We do struggle with this sometimes, because obviously at one side there's the fall. We're frustrated in sign of players. And at the same time, obviously really happy that he's done well. And that's part of the reason why we're so excited, because he'd recovered. And there was this big wave of optimism coming to the new season. And then we didn't sign a player for the whole of August. We didn't sign a permanent player in August at all. And we thought we'd sign another 5.
Well, there you go. That shows sometime, doesn't it? Just ask you a quick question here about the new meadow, because you've been there for 15 seasons now. I couldn't believe that when I checked that before we started, really. You've been there for quite a while. And does it feel like home now? Because, I mean, it's something that we discuss as Carlisle fans. We all love Brunton Park, but it is crumbling and it's fallen to bits, and the club needs to do something about it in coming years. Do you still pine for the town centre picturesque surroundings of Gay Meadow?
I think you said it there. You got it. You hit the nail on the head. The town centre location.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone was. The Gay Meadow was special. The trees, the walk down the road, down the hill, the Ollie road to go to the stadium. I don't think anyone really misses the smell of wee in the corner. But it was great because you were really close to the opposition fans and also to the players. So there was a lot of obviously positives. But on the other side, it used to flood. We had no insurance.
Yeah.
It was falling apart. We would not been in. We were the second longest serving League One team after Gillingham, and there's no way we'd be in that situation without having a new stadium. Our running costs are lower, all that kind of boring stuff. So I think we feel like it's home now, and we still do miss the town centre feel. If I don't live in Shrewsbury, I live in Stourbridge, so I drive it's like 40 minutes. But for me to get a train, I'd have to go to centre Birmingham to Shrewsbury, and then get a taxi to the stadium. Yeah. That kind of match day experience isn't the same for home or away fans, and that is a real shame. But I think the positive outweigh the negatives, but it is a real negative.
Yeah. Finally, before I get on to your prediction for this game, Ollie, I've got to ask you about the 2 ex-Carlisle players in your squad now. Before we went, had a little chat before we recorded today, and you weren't too complimentary about at least one of them. Let's say that. Bowman and Cosgrove, how are they both getting? Obviously, Brian Bowman started out in our youth academy. He never quite made it, but he's done really well to carve himself out a decent career. Sam Cosgrove was blinking, you miss him, yet he's made us a decent chunk of money in a weird way. How have the two of them got on so far? Yeah,
Cosgrove is a bit of a weird one. He came in, we saw that he was a £2 million signing for Birmingham. We had quite high hopes he'd come in. We didn't need strikers. Mm-hmm. We had a large number of strikers already. So when we signed him, we thought, well, he must be really good. Yeah, he has scored 2 goals. So he has scored 2 goals for us in nearly 700 minutes, which is obviously not great, but it's not. I'm sure you've had worse strikers than that. And he just doesn't seem at the races. And I think he's almost a bit of a victim of how hard working the rest of the team is.
Yeah.
One of the things that Shrewsbury Town fans, and I'm not sure what Carlisle fans are like, but I imagine you guys are quite similar. The one thing that we will want from our team is hard work. Yeah. And if you put hard work in, you're going to get a lot of favourable, I've seen a lot of Shrewsbury Town fans going on about different players, and I'm thinking, well, they're not really that good at passing and stuff, but because they're working so hard, that kind of covers a lot of other kind of gaps. Yeah. And the trouble with Sam Cosgrove is he's so big, he's so lanky, he doesn't really look like he's trying very hard. Yeah. And when you compare him to like Bowman, who does work really hard, makes really good runs, and like when we played, say for example, in the other round of the FA Cup, Bowman scored a few goals, and he's not lightning fast, he's not super strong, he's a really solid League One striker, I think, lower end League One striker, and. Yeah, he does all the hard work. He makes all the good runs. He's a bit of a needle, kind of a few elbows, and kind of gets into a little bit of a battle with the opposition's central defenders. So it's a bit of like chalk and cheese, really. What Bowman's doing and getting all the plaudits for is the hard work. We're just not seeing that from Sam Cosgrove at all.
Yeah. A bit of a tough time for him there so far, isn't it? I think it's fair to say. Well, thanks for giving your time again, Ollie. Before we finish, we always like to ask our opposition podcast for a prediction for the game this weekend. So how do you think it's going to go?
No, I looked at our recent record. It's quite favourable. So in the last 6, we've done quite well against you. But the last time we played you was it, something like 6 years ago now?
Yes.
So yeah, we beat you 2-1 away. Yeah. And I'm going to go to the same scoreline. So I think we'll go through to the next round. Confident that Cottrell will have scouted you guys out well. We'll have a good game plan, and I think we'll win 2-1.
Well, there you go. That's what. To be honest, it wouldn't probably surprise me if that was the result. But thanks for your time, Ollie. Really appreciate it, and all the best for the season.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, thanks once again to Ollie for giving up his time to speak to us. I mean, I do miss our games against Shrewsbury Town. It's weird actually. Look at it. We've only played them 51 times, which is less than like Barrow and both Walsall.
We used to play them a bit in supporters matches, didn't we? In the sort of turn of the century.
It was brilliant fun, wasn't it? We generally they're a team you can actually rely on to turn up as well. Whereas some of the others,
they had the most organised fella running them. It was a fella called Chris, and he was a lovely bloke.
Yeah,
but bloody hell, he was organised. He had a rota for buttoning the bread for the chipsanis afterwards. A rota for buttoning bread. That's amazing.
It put us to shame as well because our organisation skills were pretty appalling at the best of times.
We always had enough players in a minibus. That's all we needed. The fact that we were all half drunk from the night before, etc., didn't matter.
Remember Wrexham away when we got beat 6-1 and we turned up and the Wrexham team there was only 8 of them. It was a shambles. And they didn't even have like dressing rooms, did they? Or anyway, where you could get changing rooms, where you could get changed. So we had to play the game and then we basically had to sneak into a local sports centre and go and get a shower in there, didn't we? It was a bit of a joke that was back in the day, but there you go. Anyway, let's get on to this weekend's game. So, Shrewsbury Town in the FA Cup. The referee is Samuel Barrett. It's his second season, as an EFL referee. He's taken charge of 18 games so far this season. He's handed out 72 bookings, but no red cards.
Isn't it?
So it's 4 a game. I think recently he's been handed like 5 or 7 in a few games as well. He last took charge of United for the 2-0 home defeat to Forest Green Rovers earlier this season. Dickinson and Abrahams were both booked in that game, which is also the only league game that Jonathan Dinzey's played so far. So there you go. Classic match, Dan. There's only one I could pick.
There's only really one, isn't there?
If you're a Shrewsbury Town fan, listen to this.
What a night.
You might want to skip forward about 2 minutes because we're about to talk about the game that took place on the 29th of April, 2003. Yes, the 2002-2003 season. I think it was the penultimate game of the season, wasn't it? The battle to avoid the drop, with United knowing that a win would not only secure their safety, but also send the Shrews crashing down into the nationwide conference. And backed by a very strong following, as you expect. I didn't go to this one because it was midweek, and I think, I would have been in sixth form, so I wasn't able to get away.
I was working in Manchester, and I basically said to the lads, look, I think we're meant to finish at 5, so I'm pissing off at 4. We're going to Shrewsbury, so I'm not missing this game.
Yeah.
And by mid-afternoon, half the lads were like, should we all go take the work van? Happy days. So about 7 of us went in the work van. The lad who drove, we all give him a £5 each to drive us there.
Yeah.
He didn't even come in the game.
Did he not?
He just sat in the van. He was just a bit of a strange bloke, like. Yeah. But
that's easy money for him, though, wasn't it? I guess, but there you go.
Yeah, but it came off the back of a good 3-2 win at Torquay on the Saturday as well, didn't it?
Yes, where I think did Mark Somerville scored with a slide tackle in that game, didn't he? Basically, I remember he scored from distance, but he scored it. He essentially slid into the ball.
We scored 3 late on in the first half from memory in that game, and
we
were like, oh, and did Peter Murphy scored an own goal in that game?
I have a feeling he might have done, I can't remember. I'd have to go back and check it, but there you go. But obviously we're backed by a strong following, as you mentioned there, with a few stragglers who weren't even supporters of the club there by the sound of things. United actually went behind after 31 minutes as Mark Birch fouled. I think it was Sam Aston. I think he brought down in the box, and it was a bit of a gift of a penalty, really. Up stepped Nigel Jemson. There's a name that
always scored against us, didn't it?
Sends shivers down the spine, doesn't it? Because like you said, whether he was at Rotherham or Shrewsbury, he always scored against us. And I mean, he was never going to miss that penalty, was he? Put it into the top corner, sent Glenn in the wrong way. But that lead only lasted 6 minutes, and it was a crazy couple of minutes that saw United go from 1-0 down to 2-1 up. Firstly, it was a free kick into the box from Craig Russell. There's a blast from the past. And it was a poor touch from the centre-back, Wilding. I don't know what he was doing. He was trying to control it, but he basically put it on a plate for Wake, who snuck in and just poked the ball home from about 3 yards out to get the equaliser. And then pretty much from the kickoff, United were back on the attack, and they won the ball deep in the Shrewsbury half, and Baldacchino got to the edge of the box, and the pass through is a brilliant pass when you look back at it, because there's 3 defenders lined up on the edge of the box, and he just pokes it through past them. You can't really tell if Wake's onside or not. I'm guessing he must have been, because there's no real complaints. There must have been a right back playing him on or something. He gets into the box and he turns the goalkeeper, and then defender gets back on the line and he tries to stop it, but he was never going to stop him finishing. And 2-1. And if you watch the video back, the scenes in the away end when that goal goes in.
We were still half on the fence from the first goal when the second one went in.
I know.
Because we're all hanging off the fence singing, because we'd scored.
Yeah, I'm sure someone...
Absolute pandemonium.
I'm sure someone I know tells me that they basically sprained their ankle when their second goal went in, because it just went so balmy. Because I mean,
that tennis at Shrewsbury, it was quite deep, but it was shallow and rising up in height, wasn't it? It wasn't a steep tennis. It was one of those that just progressively went. So, you always, if there was a big crowd in it, you felt, this is busy, And
I feel like the front of it was a little bit of a dip down from the pitch, wasn't it? It wasn't.
Yes, it was.
You had to climb on the fence and stuff, and yeah, I mean, the younger fans won't remember Gay Meadow, but it was a proper old school lower league football ground, right in the centre of town, not far from the railway station as well. Some good pubs nearby, but like I said, a bit of a dump to put it bluntly. But all the trees around it made it look, right by the River Severn, made it look lovely, didn't it, on the actual surroundings to it? But there you go. So yeah, that was 2-1, and into the second half, just 5 minutes after the break, the Blues made it 3-1, and it was that man Wake who completed his hat trick. I mean, looking back, this is an agricultural goal as you ever see, isn't it? It's a big punt forward, and Richie Foran just cleans out 2 defenders to win a header.
He would be pulled up straight away these days for it.
Oh, he'd probably be given a foul, but he
probably get a booking as well, probably.
Yeah, he basically wins the header, comes to Wake on the edge of the box, and it's no real skill, is it? He just sort of bundles it past 2 defenders, and he's through on goal. And then he shows great composure to basically just round the keeper and put it into the net, and you could see how gutted their fans behind the goal were, because a point wasn't good enough for them. They needed a win, Shrewsbury, to have any chance of staying up or take it to the last game at the very least. And yeah, so at that point, United restricted the chances of Shrewsbury for the rest of the game. Luke Rogers scored a brilliant consolation goal, didn't he? It was a volley from about 20 yards over. I mean, I have to admit, Glennon's miles out of position for the goal. He doesn't do very well on it. But I mean, even the reactions to the goal, the celebrations were quite muted. They were quite resigned, as if to say, there's no way we're getting 2 more goals in this game, really. Even though there was 6 minutes left to play, which surprised me, because I thought it was like the 89th minute they scored originally. But I look back and it's 84, and...
Well, 6 minutes, and it was a good 4 or 5 minutes of injury time.
It's quite surprised. You can actually watch the whole game back. It's on YouTube, because Shrewsbury, during all the pandemic, they played some classic games back on their YouTube channel. And for whatever reason, and this baffles me, they picked that as one of the games to show back. I mean, baffling. If Carl United did that with the Cheltenham game, people would be abusing them, saying, what the hell are you doing? But there you go. But yes, obviously United held on, got the 3 points they needed, and Shrewsbury dropped into non-league football after 53 seasons in the Football League.
I've got the game up on Soccer Base. What a team we had out. Paul Raven played. Ryan Baldacchino, John McCarthy, Craig Russell.
I mean, the midfield too, because John McCarthy, although he's a winger in his early days, he played in sort of centre mid a lot for us, didn't he? And
his pace had gone, hadn't it? So. Yeah,
it was him alongside Mark Somerville, and then Craig Russell sort of almost playing out of position on the wing, wasn't he? Really, he was more of a striker. So it was an interesting team to say the least, and they got the win there. That's all that's mattered. And actually, when you watch back the highlights thing from Border TV, Roddy Collins, to his credit, did say, like, look, it's a brilliant result. We've got the result we wanted, but it's not a night for taking the players back out and celebrating in front of our fans, because Shrewsbury had been relegated that night, basically.
That was a little touch of class, wasn't it? It's time and place sort of thing.
Exactly that. So there you go. So that's the classic match. I'll stick the highlights up so everyone watch it. I didn't even stick the links to the full game if you want. I watched a good chunk of it, and you don't realise how poor football actually could be at the low level back then. Genuinely, poor Carl United teams now are probably better than that team was back then.
Oh yeah.
That tells you all you need to know.
A lot of our younger listeners, honestly, when we say stuff was rubbish in either the early 90s or the turn of the century, believe me, it was absolute dog shite.
It was awful. And poor teams now generally play better football. They might be a bit blunt at times, but they'll play better football. Believe me.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan, let's get on to play for both. This is your bit. You obviously each week go through a single player and tell us about the player who played for both clubs. So who have you gone for this time?
I've picked a player who's 40-year-old now from Leicester and is now the assistant coach for the Central Florida Panthers.
Oh, I know this is.
Yeah. Go on,
It's Lewis Neal. I generally thought you were going to be close between picking him, Ian Stevens or Stuart Whitehead, but you keep resisting Ian Stevens. You keep resisting the chance to pick him. He's been in a few times, but
because I'd talk for like 4 hours about him. The best striker.
Let's
ever.
do a special podcast on Ian Stevens at some point.
We should hunt him down and get him on.
Oh, 100%. If we can find him, I'd definitely do that. Definitely.
But no, Lewis Neal, born in Leicester, started as a youth at Stoke, and he went on to make a few appearances for Stoke in 5 years, about 70, 80 games. He had a loan in Iceland for a few games as well, which was...
Stoke used to do that a lot, because they used to have Icelandic owners, didn't they, for a while?
Yeah, so they'd send a few over. Then he went to Preston next, and he sort of flitted in and out. Again, 65, 70 games in 4 years. A little loan at Notts County, but then he came to us for 2009, and I actually thought he played a few more games, and it says 16 here. Scored a couple of goals. You know, he was January he joined us, wasn't it?
He was part of the team that basically kept us in the league, wasn't it? Essentially,
yeah.
Kept us in League One, basically. That season, yeah.
But even though I thought he played quite well for us because he had a couple of niggles while he was here, but he got. He got released and he signed a 2-year contract with Shrewsbury. And he played, again, you know, in and out, 31 games, so. And January 11, he was released by Shrewsbury on mutual consent. And he upped sticks and moved to the United States, to the Orlando City Soccer Club of the USL Pro, it's the 3rd tier.
Yeah.
And then he actually moved. He went to Real Salt Lake on trial, but then DC United picked him up, and he actually became quite a key figure for DC United. He had a good couple of seasons there, and then he moved over to Orlando City when they moved into the expansion, and when he actually finished at his time there in the end of the 2015, he was obviously there in the Summer League.
Yeah.
He got a 2-year deal with an academy coaching role, and he basically played for the B team. You know, like you see, like Gary Dicker at Brighton.
Yeah, and Ollie at Southampton.
Paul McShane at Man United. Yeah. Basically, he was a bit of one of the first to do this, and he did that for Orlando City, and he signed for the Orlando Seawolves, which is actually arena football.
Yeah, they do that in America still, don't they? Because they used to do it a lot in the 80s, but they've started doing it again like that in recent times, haven't they? Yeah,
but he joined his former Seawolves coach at Central Florida Panthers of the National Premier Soccer League. So, and apparently he's got a full US green card now. So. He's obviously enjoyed himself. He's still over there coaching. So
there you go, Lewis Neal. There you go. Interesting. Well, let's do the full list then, Dan. It's there's a few names we've had on quite a bit recently as well. But first up, Derek Asamoah. He had a decent spell at Shrewsbury. I seem to remember is Shrewsbury the club that I think he. I'm not saying did the dirty on, but I think he basically left them to go to Nice, didn't he? I think he disappeared, didn't he, and just turned up in Nice to sign for them at some point.
As you do.
Shrewsbury fans will correct me on this, I'm sure.
Shrewsbury or the French Riviera. Shrewsbury or the French Riviera.
Yeah.
With no disrespect to Shrewsbury, it's quite a nice little town.
Yep, indeed. You'd pick the French Riviera, wouldn't you? Every day of the week. Not someone who played for us, but he did manage us, but he did play for Shrewsbury. Ian Atkins. I think he started his career at Shrewsbury, actually, I seem to remember. Very early on in his career, anyway. I think he was part of quite a decent Shrewsbury side. Austin Berkeley. There's the player going back. He was one of the players who signed under Roddy, wasn't it? I think when he first took over, and he was basically getting anyone he could in on a couple of months' deal or something like that. I think he only played a handful of games. Des Collins, I think he's a player we mentioned a bit recently. Frank Clark, he had a decent spell at Shrewsbury as well as his good spell with us. One of the players who plays for them now, we'll touch on him in a minute. Sam Cosgrove, he's now on loan at Shrewsbury. Russell Coughlin, we mentioned him a couple of times recently as well, haven't we? Actually, he seems to have played it for a few teams. John Cullen. Do you remember John Cullen, Dan?
Well, I remember him. I wouldn't say he didn't.
He was on loan from Peterborough, wasn't he, in the season when Ian Atkins was in charge, funnily enough, actually. All I remember about him, he had a real mahogany shade to him because he clearly was a big fan of the Sunbeds. Really loved the sunbed, that fella, I think it's fair to say. Jamie Devitt had a loan spell at Shrewsbury. He wasn't particularly successful there. Mark Ellis, I think we signed him from Shrewsbury, actually, didn't we? I seem to remember. I think that's where we got him from, or I might have imagined that. Chris Freestone. There's a player who sends shivers down our spine as well. Didn't have the best of loan spells with us from Middlesbrough, I think it's fair to say. Was very successful at Shrewsbury. I think he did really well there, actually, I seem to remember. Anthony Gerrard, he had a time at Shrewsbury Town. Alex Gilliard had a loan spell there. Arthur Gnua, Paul Gorman. There's another blast from the past. Anthony Griffith. Will we ever forget the fact that Keith Curle decided to not tell anyone that he'd gone on international duty with Montserrat, as if it was some big secret and it would make a big difference tactically? Ridiculous.
Still astonishes me. That still astonishes me.
Up there with, what was it, announcing Matt Young at 2:00?
Yeah, and then the night game where, was it Joe, was it Ward?
Yeah.
And the other lad?
James Hooper.
Hooper and Ward, yeah. James Hooper still plays a little bit of...
Joe Ward retired at the end of that season.
Joe Ward retired. That's how depressed he got at the mid. Bloody hell.
Bloody hell. Jeremy Haylan. He had a loan spell at Shrewsbury as well. Dean Henderson, obviously never played first team for us, but he had a really good spell at Shrewsbury Town. Very popular there still.
Could be a key man for us in January, Dean.
Oh, he's going to be a big man for us with any luck.
When Newcastle buy him for 40 million.
Come on, the Geordies. Splash the cash. David Hughes. A one-game wonder. In fact, it was even a 60-minute wonder, wasn't it? I think he got subbed after 60 minutes of being in the game.
Yeah.
He was disastrous. He was a big loan signing. We signed him on loan from Aston Villa, and there were big things expected of him, and he was awful, and he was never seen again. But at Shrewsbury, he was massively popular. He was a big player for them, and I think they sold him to Cardiff for big money, didn't they?
Yeah, about $500,000 or something from memory.
Yeah, he didn't play much for Cardiff though after that, I think, I seem to remember. Who else have we got? Brian Hornsby. Mike Jones had a loan spell at the start of his career at Shrewsbury Town. Nathaniel Knight Percival spent some time there. Kelvin Langmead. So we mentioned him recently in the FA Cup. Sorry. JB McClenn. God, he blinking, you miss him with him, wasn't it?
Yeah. Do you know something? That was a player, when you talk about players who just, it didn't quite happen for, injuries and whatnot, he was really well thought of at Newcastle, wasn't he, Jamie McClenn?
Yeah, it was difficult for him to get into the team as well, because he had the likes of Billy and Lumsden and Adam Murray ahead of him, didn't he? So it was always going to be a challenge for him to get into the team here. Who else? We've got Sean Miller. He spent some time with Shrewsbury. Paul Murray. Lewis Neal, we mentioned already. Nigel Pearson played for Shrewsbury at the start of his career. Obviously, he managed us. Jamie Proctor. I mean, he seems to have played for bloody everyone in the lower leagues, doesn't he?
Yeah.
David,
I wouldn't mind him playing for us now.
Oh, certainly not. No. David Raven had some time there. The man, the myth, the legend, Ian Stevens. Popular at both clubs.
Ian Stevens.
The Lord himself, yes. He's well liked at both Shrewsbury and Carlisle, isn't he? I think for what he did.
Because he scored goals at both, didn't he?
Basically. We paid $100,000 for him, I think, from Shrewsbury, didn't we? When we originally signed him, that is, of course. James Tavernier. He had a loan spell with Shrewsbury as well as us. I was looking at his stats before. He's got a ridiculously goal-scoring record for Rangers, hasn't he?
Yeah, but he takes a lot of penalties as well.
But it's like 1 in 4. It's like he's played 200 games, he's got 50-odd goals, which is incredible.
Rangers get a lot of penalties.
True, but it's
you could do an episode on Rangers and penalties. It's a bit of a contention with fans from the East End of Glasgow.
I'm sure it is.
We'll keep that off of you.
Yeah, Mark Tierney, he was at Shrewsbury as well. George Waring, another one. George Waring, I was looking back at, right, when he was at because he was at Stoke, wasn't he? That we signed him on loan for, right?
Yeah.
At the start of his career, when he was at Stoke, he had a loan spell at Barnsley where he scored 6 goals in 19 games, and then he went on spells lower down the leagues and failed to score at anyone, basically. Baffling how that happens with some players, isn't it? Really, really weird. Your friend of mine, Stuart Whitehead, good player.
Top man, and a top man.
Top man. And finally, Mark Beef Winstanley, another player I really do like. Well, I mean, the most ironic nickname ever, because he was like a rake, wasn't he? But I mean, he was a great player. Exactly what we needed in those 2 seasons we had him, wasn't he? Really, just a good, solid defender.
Certain players fit certain teams, and he was the right man for the right team at the right time, sort of thing.
Coming
It?
towards the end of his career, then, wasn't he? I think he left us. He went to Southport, didn't he? And I think he got a job delivering bread or something like that. But he was ill, wasn't he, in the last couple of years? We found an article about him, didn't we? And he'd been quite seriously ill.
Yeah,
but he's recovered. So good news there. Good news there.
Good.
Let's talk about Shrewsbury Town then, Dan. So we played them 51 times in our history. We've won 17, drawn 19, and we've lost 15. I genuinely think these are one of the clubs that you look at and you think, we should be doing as well as them. We should look, I'd argue we're probably a slightly bigger club than them. But you look at them and you think, what they've achieved and what they've managed to do as a club. And I think it shows how badly we failed, doesn't it, really? When you look at it, they've managed to... They've been out the league, like us. They came back at the first attempt. They've sort of bobbled about the lower leagues a little bit. But now...
When I was first properly into football, Shrewsbury were a championship team. Yeah. I'm talking mid-80s. Well, we were.
I think they got relegated in 89, didn't they? I think that's when they got relegated back down to the third division. And I think they pretty much stayed in the third division, which is now League One, for quite a while. Because, I remember we played them when we went up from the third division, from League Two equivalent, basically, didn't we? And then they stayed there. We went back down. It wasn't until like a few years later that they came down to that level and then eventually got relegated to the National League. The conference as it was back then, of course. They're pretty much a mainstay now in League One, albeit they've had a bit of a fright last season. They came close to the Championship a few years ago in that team that Dean Henderson was a part of, didn't he? And I mean, the guy was saying from the Salopcast that it was just a case of everything fell into place really well at that point. And then obviously losing Paul Hurst the season after basically just killed it, and they just didn't replace him well. And it's been a bit of a slog in the last few years, but you'd say they're a League One club, aren't they, really, in the setup they've got, really. And a big part of that is moving away from Gay Meadow. So we touched on it before. It was a proper old school football ground. And you came to that New Meadow game with me, didn't you, where Sean O'Hanlon scored that goal? And
yes, yeah.
And we looked like we're on for a win, didn't we? And I think we got a draw in the end in that match. Or did we lose it? I can't remember. In fact, we were lost, actually.
No, did we not draw?
I think it might have been 2-2. I think you might be right on that one, actually, now I think about it.
Did we not take the lead late on and then we somehow chucked it away?
Yes, right at the very end. It was one of the most ridiculous things, and you're like, are you kidding me? All the effort to get ourselves back into the game, and ended up losing it. Or not losing it, sorry, drawing it, I should say. So, they've moved to Gay Meadow, away from Gay Meadow now, to New Meadow. And it's a bit of a pain to get to, isn't it, Dan? I think it's fair to say.
I've just got it up on Google. We were 1-0 down. David and Moo equalised with about 5 minutes to go.
I couldn't remember his
And then Sean O'Hanlon buried it. Yeah. And the away end went badly. And then Paul Parry equalised on injury time for them.
Wasn't it? Basically, didn't they pretty much equalise from the kickoff, near enough? I'm sure
pretty much just went up, yeah.
We were still celebrating. I'll tell you what it was. It was Liam McSweeney, wasn't it? He miscontrolled the ball over the top and he let the lad in and he scored. And you were just like, you're taking the mickey now. That's just ridiculous. But yeah, no, that's going back a bit now, isn't it? Yeah, I remember that's the only time I've been.
2013, that was 8 years ago.
Wow, that's the only time I've been to the New Meadow. Actually, we never won there. It's a proper typical new lower league ground, isn't it? Really, in the setup they've got there. Obviously, we're not playing there this weekend, but it's just worth noting. But it basically generates income for them, and that's the reason why they're debt free. And they're solid, and they've got a good wage structure there. They can still spend a bit of money when they want. I mean, they're going to be paying a bit of money in terms of wages for Sam Cosgrove on over from Birmingham, you'd think. You know, they've had a few other players in there. Elliot Bennett's not going to be a cheap signing either. And Pennington, who was at Everton, we'll mention him in a minute. He's down as the star man. So they've got a good setup. But as a club, they're probably not bigger than us, really. Realistically, they're not going to get as big a crowds. It's not as big a town. But they're so well run, they haven't got any issues, which basically shows how badly we've been run in the last decade or so, doesn't it? Really, when you think about it. Let's talk about the manager, Steve Cotterill. Vastly experienced coach, isn't he? He's one of those people, you think lower league clubs, if they're in a bit of trouble, or even sort of higher up, it's someone they look to, isn't it, to sort of stabilise them, get the defence really well organised and get results. I mean, he's done a brilliant job at some clubs, I think, while not doing so well at others. If you ask Cheltenham fans and Bristol City fans, they talk about him like he's a god, don't they? Cheltenham especially. He's the local lad who got them into the league as a manager for the first time. Bristol City, he got them so close to the Premier League, didn't he? I think, seem to remember back in the day, and really well liked for what the work he'd done there. But Birmingham City fans hate him. They say the football he produced was awful. And I always remember his Cheltenham team. But it's one of those things with a manager, isn't it? You always remember the first club they managed, don't you? And the way they did things there. And that's the thing that sticks in your head. So all I think of is his Cheltenham teams were very direct, to say the least, weren't they?
Yeah, yeah.
The football they played was not pleasing on the eye. I think it's one way of describing it.
It was always very, very short grass and a lot of sand. And
was it Julian Alsop they used to have up front, wasn't it, for them?
Yeah.
Big lad. And he was always an absolute pain to play against. And there's a couple of others. I can't remember the name of the lad. Martin Devaney, I think, was the striker they had back then. He scored a few goals. And yeah, they were a club, basically. Whenever you play them, you thought, we're in for a battle here this afternoon. Yeah. But by all accounts, he has mixed his style up a little bit down the years. And there's times where he's dropped out of being a manager, hasn't he? He's just been assistant. I think he left. Did he leave Stoke City to be assistant at Sunderland under Howard Wilkinson or something like that? I seem to remember back in the day. Bit of a strange one, that one. But yeah, he's done a solid job so far in Shropshire. But he's known for his abrasive style. I think he's rubbed a few local journalists up the wrong way recently. I think I've seen a few interviews where he's basically been very short with them, to say the least. When they've asked perfectly normal, acceptable questions, nothing wrong with the questions, he just seems to be in a bit of a grumpy mood.
He's not quite Crawley level. No. Crawley.
Oh, what's his name? John. Yeah, I can't remember his name anyway. The bloke at Crawley, basically, he's not as bad as him.
Yeah.
He has had he caught COVID twice earlier this year. He's been in hospital twice, and he
was badly with it, wasn't he?
Really badly by all accounts. Yeah, and
John Yems.
John Yems. That's his name. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Steve Cotterill. He's sounds like he divides fans' opinions so far, but generally they're quite happy with the job he's done there. I've picked up my star man, Dan. I've gone for Matthew Pennington. He's an Everton Academy graduate. He was highly rated at Goodison Park. He didn't leave until he turned 26, but he only played 7 first-team games then. He never was quite good enough to break in to the starting lineup on a regular basis. But he's actually got a lot of experience. He's had loan spells at Tranmere, Coventry, Walsall, Leeds, Ipswich and Hull City. He had a final loan spell at Shrewsbury before he signed permanently for them in the summer.
When I have a game on Football Manager every year,
you always sign him, yeah.
I always try to, because Everton's one of those teams that I like doing, because it's a bit of a challenge to get them into the top 4 and into Europe and stuff. And whenever I've done an Everton game in the last few years, he's always been out on loan straight away.
Yeah.
And you're like, there was him, and there was another one. Oh, I can't remember.
I think I know who you mean.
Was it Hibbert? It Hibbert? No, not Hibbert. Luke
Garbett, yes.
Yes.
I mean, he only left recently as well.
Garbett and Pennington are both like late 20s now, and they've been on loan their entire career.
Yeah, but they've actually played regular football when they've been on loan. You can see some of them barely play it. They've generally played games. But yeah, he's a summer signing and he seems to have done pretty well so far. Other key squad members, Dan, I don't know if your thoughts on these, you've probably had a look through their squad. I mean, Aaron Pierre's one I've always really rated. He was at Wickham and he always had really good game against us. Big, strong lad at the back. And I presume he's the centre-back partner, at least, for Pennington for them. Up front, they've obviously got strikers. They've got Ryan Bowman, who's done okay so far, and Daniel Udoh, and they've got 4 goals each in the league so far this season. And in midfield, a couple of experienced players. Elliot Bennett is one who's always, he was always excellent for Brighton against us back in the League One days. And David Davis started out at Wolves, but I think he spent a lot of his career at Birmingham City, and he's, again, one who's got a lot of experience at a higher level, and that's the thing that comes out.
Talk about players, Shrewsbury quite well sort of placed for picking up from... your likes of Wolves and Villa and Birmingham, it's not too far.
Well, yeah.
Stoke, even the Manchester clubs aren't that far, and they've got quite a few clubs to sort of get players from.
Yeah, is there any other players that stand out in the squad to you, Dan? I mean, it's an interesting... One thing that stands out is they haven't got much in midfield. There's a lot of attackers, a lot of defenders, and then I can only see 4 midfielders listed on Transfermarkt. Sometimes they don't have the positions right and stuff like that. That's sometimes the issue. But yeah, it looks a very unbalanced squad, to say the least. I mean, Sean Wally's been playing for quite a while now. He's 34. He's got a bit of experience, hasn't he? And beyond that,
Josh Vella was at Bolton and Hibs, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's not a bad little player either.
Yeah.
And George Nurse has had a few loan spells at the lower league levels, hasn't he? And he's always done quite well from memory. So there's a decent mix in the squad. I think, as the guy from the Shrewsbury podcast did say, it's just a lack of balance in their squad. That's the problem. I think they were very frustrated when somebody signed a couple of strikers when they were like, well, we've already got strikers. And I think
the keeper, is he Slovakian, is it?
I think he might be, yeah, Morosi.
Yeah, he's not a bad keeper from memory. He was at Doncaster.
Yeah, he was at Coventry as well, wasn't he? I think.
That's right, Coventry, yeah.
Yeah, so he's a pretty decent player too. Not too bad a squad. I mean, they're probably right about where they should be, lower mid-table in League One right now. Currently, they're sitting, I think it's 6th in the last 6 games League One form table. They're doing really well, actually. United are 19th for the League Two table, which is an improvement where we've been, isn't it? I think we've been 24th for quite a while in that. So Shrewsbury's recent record is lost 1, drawn, lost, drawn 1. But the last 2 league games, they've drawn 1-1 with Sunderland and beaten Charlton Athletic 1-0. So there's certainly no mugs, I think it's fair to say. The last time we beat Shrewsbury Town was actually in a League Cup tie in 2008. And we've gone 6 games without victory since then. If you go to just league games, our last win was 9 games ago. And which game was that, Dan? It was the 3-2.
9 wins ago.
It was the 3-2 at Gay Meadow. That was the last time we actually beat Shrewsbury Town. And
we actually qualified for Wembley that same season, a month earlier in March.
Yeah.
In 0-0 on the Tuesday night.
Well, it would have been Wembley with Millennium Stadium, wasn't it, back then? Of course, in 2004.
Yeah, it was for the Millennium, wasn't it?
Yeah, we did indeed.
It was Bristol City, yeah.
Yeah, one of those ones, yeah. So there you go. That's pretty much it, I think, in terms of the Shrewsbury Town stuff, Dan. Going to be a tough tie, isn't it? I think that one, I think it's fair to say. In terms of United, injury-wise, I mean, just rotten luck for Joe Riley, isn't it, really, this season? Just one thing after another. He's picked up that foot injury after Keith Millen come in, recovers from it, and then it looks like a shoulder injury. Now, we don't know if it's going to be as bad as the one George TownA had, because George TownA had one before, hadn't he? So that probably worked against him in that sense. Hopefully, maybe a little bit quicker than TownA's was.
Well, as ever, timing has landed for us because the club have just tweeted an injury update as we record.
Oh, lovely!
So
well
fantastic.
I'll let you lead on this because you
apparently there's no structural damage. It's more ligament, and it's going to be weeks instead of months. But it certainly isn't days.
Well, that's
but
good.
I would say you're probably looking at January, aren't you?
Yeah. You got a busy period coming up. You don't want to throw him in for the sake of the day, especially when you're playing on much harder ground as well. If you fall into any more damage, you don't want that, do you?
Dickinson trained today, so it's waiting to see if he's got any reaction.
Yep.
If he trains tomorrow, he gets through and he's available.
Brilliant.
And it says, obviously, with Scott Simons away, Gabe Breeze will be on the bench, but Magnus Norman is improving quickly.
Excellent. That's good to hear as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there you go. And obviously the other injuries we've already got. You mentioned Magnus Norman there. Lucas Jensen's got his hand injury. Josh Dixon's still out of action. And Lewis Alessandro's got that foot injury. We don't have any update on that at the moment, do we, though? So there you go. John Mellish will miss this game as well. He was able to play midweek because what they've done, they've basically taken the suspension setup for the trophy out of the league and cup one, haven't they? Which is good news.
It's all very weird.
Yeah, it's very strange, isn't it? So John Mellish will miss this game as the last game of his 3-match ban. We're not 100% certain if Jack Armour's got to 5 bookings, aren't we? We're a bit confused.
No, he hasn't. He hasn't. We were discussing it in WhatsApp when it happened, and he has 5 bookings, but one was in the League Cup.
Right.
So he's only on 4 in the league, and Saturday was the 19th game. So he's free now.
Right.
So he can start racking them up again.
Perfect. That's exactly what we want to hear, isn't it? So if you want to kick someone
which is something Callum Guy's been doing, because having had his 1-match ban for 5, he's now been booked in the 3 games since he returned.
All 3.
Although one of them was the trophy, so that
doesn't count. Yeah,
that's about as relevant as a chocolate teapot. So
yeah, there you go. Exactly. So there you go. Generally this game, Dan, what do you do? I mean, there's not much we can do because of all the injuries, is there really? Dickinson can come in maybe to shore things up and play on the wing, possibly if he's fit. I'd imagine that's what will happen. If he is, otherwise it'll be Taylor Charters maybe that'll start.
Or Clough.
Possibly Clough. I mean, Clough's a bit out of contention to me. It's quite telling when he made the sub of the week and Clough wasn't the one he turned to, was it? He turned to Charters to do the job, and he did. So it's one of those ones. Maybe that's a message to Clough, say, look, there's a young lad here who's ahead of you now for the options of playing on the wing. So yeah, that's what do you do? I mean, I'd imagine Dickinson will come back in if he's fit. Either way, I think he'll want to go back to playing 4-4-2 and get him and Gibson down the wings. Beyond that, do you stick with the two young lads up front? I think I would. I think I'd just say, go out and do what you did last weekend.
Why not?
And Abrahams did
like I said, I'd like to see Feeney and McDonald play at the back.
Yeah.
Mellor and Armour pick themselves.
Yeah.
Whelan and Guy's quite solid in the middle. Gibson and hopefully Dickinson. Yeah, play the two young lads. Because Dickinson can put a decent ball across.
Yeah, definitely.
And
that could make a difference for someone like Fishburne potentially getting on the crosses. Yeah. He's a big lad and you want to be going in for his headers, don't you? So yeah, no, I think I'd do that. And that's no slight on Abraham. Did you say to Tristan, say, look, keep on doing what you're doing off the bench, prove me wrong, get another goal, and I'll have no choice to pick you against Mansfield from the start, basically. That's what you say to him. You use it almost like it's the carrot and the stick, isn't it, really? A little bit of a stick, so you're still not quite there. You still got to do a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's the way you do it. So yeah, I'd agree with you there, basically. That's the way I'd do it. And also you get Mellish back for the game against Mansfield in midweek as well. That gives us a bit more strength in midfield too, so positive to be had. Let's do predictions then, Dan. We're going to do predictions for the Shrewsbury game and the Mansfield game because we're not going to do a preview for the Mansfield match because we're not going to have time, unfortunately, to get it in before then. So let's have yours first, Dan. What's your predictions?
Shrewsbury, I really don't know. I had visions of when the draw was made. My first thought was we got Doncaster last season, who were sort of similar to Shrewsbury, and they were a class above us. And there is that kind of worry. But I can honestly see it being a draw and a replay, 1-1. I'm going for 1-1.
Okay, I'd be happy with that because I wouldn't mind a little trip to Shrewsbury midweek.
1-1 and the Fish to score.
Oh, we're going to
I'm just going to say the Fish every game now, aren't I?
Until he does. You've cursed him, basically. It's your fault he's not scoring.
Okay.
So, and then Mansfield?
I'll take the same again. I'll take a 1-1 draw at Mansfield.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a harder game than Stevenage. Obviously, Stevenage have got the Tisdale factor, which we'll talk about next time. I'll take 1-1 and I'll sod it the Fish again.
Feed the Fish and he will score. Fantastic. Right. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw against Shrewsbury, like you. I think we'll get a replay there, take them down to the New Meadow. I'll
and what will happen, because it's Carlisle United and this is what happens, we'll get the draw. The third round draw will happen. If we get like Ipswich away, we'll win.
Yeah.
And if we get like Man City or Newcastle or Chelsea, they'll win. Because that's how it always works.
Always works that way, doesn't it? There you go. So yeah, I'll go for 1-1 and I'm going to go... I reckon Brad Young will get another goal. I think he'll get another cup goal for us. And then for the Mansfield game, I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. Yeah, why not? Let's say good result against Shrewsbury. Lifts the confidence. Get a result in Mansfield, 2-1. And I'm going to go for goals from Sam Fishburne. Like you, I'm going to go for him. And Brendan Dickinson. Brendan Dickinson will get the other goal. So there you go. That's what I'm going to go for. So yeah, that's those predictions. Let's have Mike's then now. I hope he's put both in because I did ask him for both. I haven't listened to it yet. So let's see what Mike's got to say.
I'm going to go for two of the sweatiest 1-0 wins with Gibson scoring against Shrewsbury, and I'll go for Abrams scoring against Mansfield.
Nice and efficient there, Mike. Thank you very much. 13 seconds.
Sweaty wins will take all day long.
Absolutely. Right, Dan, before we finish up, let's do the X-Files. Not a huge amount to report this week. We've got a little bit of good news again, though, isn't there?
It was probably the quietest we've had. Joe McKee scored in the 90th minute for Dumbarton. 3-1 win over Socky Juniors in the Scottish Cup.
I love the Scottish Cup.
Scottish junior football has some of the best names going, and there's been a lot of reorganisation and actually becoming quite professional. Because what it was, very quick off topic.
Yeah.
You had your professional teams and the Lowland and Highland League, and then you had all these junior teams. They were getting like 1,500, 2,000, but not part of the league. But every team that comes up now always wins the playoff against the League Two team.
Yeah, because they're strong. Because
they're better.
And the Scottish League stagnated basically as a result, and that's the reason.
Like the Cove Rangers, Kelty Hearts, these teams have absolutely...
Yeah.
And they usually win the division the season after.
Yeah.
But
the first round of the Scottish Cup's brilliant. The names of the teams you get.
Banks OD.
Yeah, the Garliffadian.
Fort Martin United.
Civil Service Strollers. That's one of my favourites.
Inverurie Loco Works.
Amazing.
Brilliant,
yeah.
Staying in Scotland, Gavin Riley scored an equaliser for Greenock Morton at against Inverness Califistle. Over to the FA Trophy, Mark Beck scored again for York, 1-0 win over Blythe. Angelo Balanta, being a regular in this section, scored for Dagenham again in a 2-1 defeat in Notts County. And the only other goal was Tom Lawrence opened the scoring for Derby at QPR on Monday, was it?
Yes, it was Monday night, this game. That was, you're right.
Yeah, and but they got beat, so... Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I'll let you do this next bit, but some good news after a bit of bad news for the next player. Yeah,
fantastic news. It just emerged today, wasn't it? So you may remember last week we had an update where Charlie Wyke had collapsed in training at Wigan and rushed to hospital. And it was quite a big story. It was quite a shock for the football world. But Charlie has left hospital now. He's put out a statement confirming that he suffered a cardiac arrest in training. Yeah. And it was actually only the actions of the manager and the club doctor.
The manager instantly realised what was happening, ran over, started compressions, and the club doctor came flying over. And if you go on to the Wigan Twitter, etc., there's a thing where apparently Wigan did CPR training for the entire club recently.
Yeah. So just goes to show, doesn't it? Yeah, just goes to show you. So yeah, great news. Apparently he's had one of those things fitted to his heart, isn't it? Like a defibrillator.
Yeah,
It's a reversible operation, so it can be taken out if there's no issues, I think.
Be interesting to see if he does come back.
Well, apparently he's going to get back into light training. I'd imagine it's one of those ones. I would be surprised if maybe
he plays this season.
This season, yes. And maybe you'll just give him a chance to recover slowly, get back to the pace of it, and hopefully be back next season playing. That's the big hope. So all the best to Charlie. Still well liked up here for his time at the club. And that's it then. Thanks once again to our sponsors, the London Branch. Really appreciate their support. In terms of upcoming episodes, obviously we're not going to do a preview for the Mansfield game, but we're going to be doing one next weekend for the Stevenage match. And then obviously we've got hopefully an FA Cup replay if our predictions are right, Dan. That's what we're hoping for. We might do
I'd prefer not to have a replay and just be happy in the hat. But...
Of course, but then you want to get predictions right, don't you? So that's the important thing. But yeah, so obviously there's that coming up, and obviously the Bradford game before Christmas, and then we'll do a little sort of Christmas preview special, won't we? Really, because we'll have to fit 2 games in a short space of time.
We could possibly even do Bradford, Salford, and Scunthorpe as one.
We might well do that. What we might do is
we might do a bit of a bumper episode, but
yeah, we'll look at how we do it. Basically, we'll have a look. But so coming up to the end of the year, another year of doing the pod, man. Nearly 2 full years now. It's incredible, isn't it? So yeah,
we might even sound professional by next year.
Not a chance. I will still be taking 2 or 3 times to do the introduction. Definitely. Dan, thanks for your time. Thanks everyone for listening, and up the Blues.
Up the Blues.